All right, last thing we're going to talk about today is talking about the World Wide Web. Okay, so a lot of times people say the word internet and World Wide Web or the web interchangeably, but technically they're not. The web is a subset of the internet because, like I said in the last video, the internet allows a lot of things. The internet is basically just the connection between multiple computers, usually through cable or Wi-Fi or something like that. And it allows for things like FTP, email, voice over IP, which is literally what you're watching me right now with. And it allows for the World Wide Web. Okay, so we're going to talk about the World Wide Web specifically. Before I talk about the web, I want to sort of use this analogy. It's this analogy that I use a lot. I call it the house analogy. Okay. And I want you to imagine that you're going to build a house. Okay. Like from scratch, not just buy a house, but like build it, you have a plot of land and you're going to build a house. Okay. So if you want to build a sophisticated house with like foundations and all that kind of stuff, you don't just, run in and to start going loosey-goosey and all that kind of stuff. You need a plan, right? You hire an architect, and an architect would have blueprints, and the blueprints are basically instructions or sort of a guide about how is the final product going to look, right? This blueprint says, hey, this is the bedroom, this is the living room, this is the breakfast nook, whatever that is, right? So it's a plan. It's a list of instructions, if you will, right? But it's not a house. What you do after that is you go and you get developers, you hire people who will, get workers, get people with power tools, hire the equipment you need, and spend the time to take the plans and then build from the plans to make the house, okay? Now, what does this have anything to do with the World Wide Web? Well, what we're going to be learning in this class is how to create web pages, okay? In fact, we're going to start pretty much tomorrow. Web pages, the underlying foundation of all web pages is hypertext markup language, okay? This is a language, programming language. Technically, it's a structuring language, okay? And HTML's job is to act as a blueprint, okay? It is to say, what a website eventually will look like, okay? The next, what you have is you have a browser, okay? A browser would be something like, Google Chrome or, Apple Safari, Mozilla Firefox, something like that. Okay. A browser's, we'll talk more about a browser in a second, but in this analogy, the browser is going to act as the developer. It's going to take the plans, the HTML, and it's going to build them. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what is the process of loading a website? Okay, so here's a little diagram here. And I'm actually just going to use Diablo Valley's website. Okay, so let's repeat, as I will be repeating many, many times. The internet at the end of the day is a bunch of computers that are all connected. Okay. We also talked about the idea of a server, the idea that a server stores files, web files, that other computers can connect to and then access or download, okay? So let's go through the process of how does that work? All right, here's this computer represents this computer you're looking at right now, okay? And I want to access, let's imagine I didn't have Diablo Valley's website going. I want to access Diablo Valley's website. Okay, so how does that work? Well, what I need to do is I need to go to the network, all of the computers. And I basically what I need to do is say, hey, I'm looking for Diablo Valley College's website. Okay, I need to make a request. Okay, kind of like making a request to a server, like a waiter or waitress in a restaurant. Okay, so how do we make that request? Well, so the way we do this is we use some form of internet browser. An internet browser is an application. It's installed on your computer. This could be a desktop, laptop, smartphone, whatever. And the internet browser is an application. You could make your own if you wanted to code an application. The internet browser has two major functions. Okay. First major function is browsers request information from the network. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, let's say I'm just going to open up Google Chrome here. You can use any browser you like. You can use Firefox, Edge, whatever, Brave, whatever you like to use. I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to type in, I don't know, I'm just going to make a bunch of random letters here. Okay. .com. All right. I don't even begin to know how you pronounce that. As or something like that. Okay. Now, if I hit, this is the address bar in my browser. If I hit return, this is basically going to send my browser, Chrome, is going to send a request to the network. And it's going to basically say, hey, does anyone have the information, any server out there have the information for this website? Now, because it doesn't exist, you're pretty much going to get nothing. Okay, I got some sort of, I don't know, warning sign here, thinks it's dangerous. But let's say I had done it correctly. Okay. I'm going to go to dvc.edu. That's Diablo Valley's official website. Okay. And it does exist. So what's happening is when I hit return, my browser, which in this case is Google Chrome, is going to send a request to the network. This is the network. It's going to say, hey, I want all of the web pages associated with this website. Okay. Somewhere out there, there is a server, or there should be a server, and I know there is. Remember, a server stores web files. That server is going to say, hey, yeah, I have those files, and my computer is going to connect to them. Okay. So here's my computer. I use some sort of browser to connect. I use the S to stand for server here. This is the server. Okay. So let's try that out. I'm just going to hit return. All right, so this is what I get. This is all of the web information, at least for the front page of Diablo Valley College. Okay. Now, what happened in that split second? Well, let's go back to the little diagram. Okay. My computer, this one that you're literally looking at, that the video was recorded on, used a browser. In this case, it was Chrome, although I could have used a different one. I could use Safari or Edge or whatever. And I contacted the server. That's what this did. What happened after that is I downloaded a bunch of files from the server. Okay, it all happened really quickly. You didn't see it, but that's what happened. Okay. I basically downloaded all of the information related to the first page. Okay, and this is what I get. So all of that happened in that split second. Let's try it again. Let's close, make a new tab, DVC. All of that happens in that split second. Okay, and this is the same if you go to any website. Now, you'll notice that when I download, I get a bunch of colors and images. There's a cool image, there's some text, blah, 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 right? All this stuff. That's not really what I download, okay? Humans think about things as colors and text and images. Computers don't think about things like that, okay? Here's what I actually downloaded, okay? In Chrome, I'm just going to go to view source, if you're wondering how I'm doing this. See this? This is actually what I downloaded from that server. This is hypertext markup language, or HTML. Okay, this is what I actually downloaded. Okay, now this is not how it looked, right? Because it's kind of scary, a lot of, a lot of brackets and stuff like this. So here's what happens. Okay, my browser, Chrome is, here's the second major function that your browser does. Your browser requests web information. And also what it does is the browser parses or builds HTML. Okay. So remember I talked about that analogy of like a blueprint and a contractor, right? Well, that's kind of what happened. The HTML, which is this is just kind of like a blueprint. This is like, oh, this is going to be, this is the blue sign here, and there's code for this, and there's code for that, and there's code for, all of this, right? And then what happened is my browser read that code and interpreted it, and it comes out with this. All right, so this is the process. And every browser interprets code a little bit differently. That's actually why sometimes web pages might look a little different depending on which browser you use, whether you use Chrome or Firefox, because they may all use the same reference, which is this, but they all read it a little bit differently to get their result, which is this. Okay. All right, so another way to look at the browser is the browser's job is to preview information. Okay, so the way I like to think about a browser is, this might be somewhat of a dated concept, but like, you remember what a DVD is, right? Now a DVD stored all the movie information on that little disc, right? But the DVD by itself was kind of useless. You couldn't watch the movie with just the DVD. You needed a DVD player, right? Or another way to think about it is like, if you have a record is this wax circle that stores audio information on it, right? Now, if you own a record, that's great and everything, but you can't hear it until you put it onto a record player, okay? So even though these store information, they need a device that can play it back. And that's what a browser is, okay? We're going to write HTML documents. Now, HTML by itself doesn't do a lot. What we need is an application that can read and parse that data. And that's what the browser is, okay? And these are just some giving ideas of popularity of browsers. There's many browsers out there. Chrome's one of the most popular. This kind of depends on the country you live in. Some, like for instance, UC browser is very popular, but it's only popular in China. So it kind of depends, where you are around the world. Okay. All right, that is it in terms of me teaching concepts. Okay, in the next video, I'm just going to talk about downloading and setting up Visual Studio Code for tomorrow. And I'll also talk about how to fill out the form question for tomorrow. Okay.